Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Inspirations about the other side of fear. I'm really excited about doing this. I was inspired to do this because one thing that I share with clients all the time as I work with them to go through their own challenges, their own transitions, and fears, one question that I always ask is when they get to the other side of fear, I have them pause and look back and share what they learned about going through fear and what would you take from that experience when fear does arise again. So now I thought I would bring on some of my clients or students because they are amazing, like Miss Emily here. She's got so much courage and she has journeyed through her own fear and is on the other side of the fear. So I love to inspire, but I know there's so many other people that can inspire you that I have witnessed and been a witness to their courage, to their journey of listening to themselves and moving one step at a time through their fear. And now Emily's on the other side of fear. So thank you, Emily, for sharing. I'm so glad I know you're going to inspire many that are on the journey that may be similar or they can relate to you. And so I wanted to ask you if you would be willing to share a little bit about your recent journey and what that fear felt like and what did it look like for you?
Sure, I'd love to. And I apologize. My dog is just getting comfy. He's excited to be here too.
You want to be a part of it, right?
So I connected with Karen when I was deciding to leave a relationship, to leave a marriage. And I had been thinking about it for quite a while. I'd waited a long time in my life to get married. So really, was the dream for me, but it didn't quite turn out as I planned. So when I connected with Karen, I was just really in that. I was paralyzed, to be honest. I just was really anxious, going back and forth, a lot of heightened stress, like cortisol, and just, yeah. So I really needed to get some clarity just on what I wanted to do in terms of whether to stay in the marriage or to leave the marriage.
Yeah. And so just to share, so, one of the things that I love to support people with is that they're never alone. And we're all on this journey called life. And we have our peaks and we have our valleys and we have our just our smooth roads sometimes. But when you were going through it, like how did you get through it and what was that turning point that you said, I just can't do this anymore?
Let's see, when I was going through it, I think initially it was interesting for me. It was very much like a grief process. Initially, I was in a lot of denial. And then I I was like crying quite a lot.
So
Trying
you
to,
had emotions coming up.
oh, yeah, a lot of emotions, some avoidance, a lot of, yeah, just a lot of crying. Sometimes, I found discussion groups really helpful, like communities, that sort of thing, in podcasts that were really helpful in terms of like, okay, I'm not alone. There are people. I'm not the first person in the world to consider divorce. I'm not a lone ranger. So I found that incredibly helpful. And hearing stories from the other side was incredibly helpful. So
Yeah.
for me, yeah, it was just a lot of crying, to be
Yeah.
honest.
And so it was emotional. And then can I ask you, because our thoughts, they run away, they start to recycle when we're in the midst of that. What was going through your thoughts during that time?
Um, I think a lot of it was, what will other people think of me? Oh my gosh, people came to the wedding and now here I am. I'm going to look so silly that I married the wrong person. I mean, of course I've learned things and now it's the right on the other side. Um, a lot of, I really had wanted children and I knew my time was running out. So I think part of me was sort of just going, oh my gosh, my dream is crumbling. My perfect family dream is gone.
Right.
um, yeah, so it was that kind of stuff.
And so, what was the turning point? Like, how did you come back to you? Because that's what I really help people. And I felt like I was there at the time on your journey that I was, you came for the soul entrainment. And I was like, okay, time to connect back to you, your soul, and to listen to that inner self. What was the turning point that got you to come back to you?
There were two big turning points. One was my mom actually had passed away, and she had been in an unhappy marriage for about 30 years. And she was on actually the verge of a divorce when she passed away. So that just really shook me. And just thinking of her in spirit and how she would not want me to spend 30 years on the fence. And she was
Mhm.
on, it was a very similar sort of situation. And the other turning point was my session with you. And just, I think all along I had a really deep feeling that it was the right decision, but it's like, you're not, like, I wasn't able to give myself permission. And I think oftentimes our deep feelings, we don't think they're something, we don't think like our true self, we don't like, we dismiss them, right? So I found myself dismissing a lot of my gut feelings, and you talk yourself out of them. So during our session, when you led me through a lot of the meditation, I was really able to connect with like that calmness that let me know, like, okay, this, everything is going to be okay. This may not be what I planned, but I can transform this into a miracle, right? I can transform this into something greater. So the session really helped me get like have that foundation, that starting off point for creating a new life.
Yeah, it sounds like you connected to an inner knowing that bypassed all this, like, what will other people think? What if my dream is crushed? It bypassed this and got you closer to here and who you really are. Is that's I felt like that's what I witness with people when they are connected to themselves and they listen to their inner guide, their inner feelings. Is am
That's
I getting?
exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and just having sort of the comparison with my mom and seeing, I just, she was so unhappy before she passed, and just sort of realizing like, okay, in order to create the happiness we really want, in order to create the love we want, which I often think we don't think is fully possible. And of course, life has its things, ups and downs. But in order to do that, we do need to follow that inner knowing.
Yeah. And so one thing that I've witnessed both with myself and many, many is that once that inner knowing, that light bulb comes off, or you get in touch and there's something you just know deeper inside of you that it's time to make a shift, make a change. What was that feeling like? Was it courage? Was it, what was it that helped you to start taking inspired action back to yourself, back to your empowerment? What was that?
For me, it was freedom. It felt really just in a calmness, right? Like, as if when I finally acknowledged that inner knowing and gave it power, it was just like, okay, all is going to work out. All of these little things, like you, right? That inner, that voice that's telling us no, that quieted down, it calmed down the inner child sort of, and I really just felt like, okay, this may not be what I imagined for my life, but I'm going to find a way to trust that it's building the foundation for something much better.
Yeah,
So it was
wow.
freedom and
So that big trust word, that's a huge word, but, you know, on some level, you had to trust yourself, but it sounds like, one thing that I share with people is getting support from the universe, from our divine family. It feels like your mother was helping you from the other side during all of this. Maybe not in a solid, tangible way, but it seems to me like she was guiding you in some way, or her spirit or her journey was being reflected back to you.
It very much. It was kind of just it was surreal a little bit. Just
Did you
imagining I did never imagine sort of how things transpired.
Yeah. Did you get any once you started to follow that knowing within yourself, did you get any signs, synchronicities? Was the universe kind of saying, "Okay, go, Emily, like, keep moving forward." Did you experience any of that?
Yeah, there was some interest some, crazy things that did happen as far as signs with my mom, like finding an old note that she wrote me in 1992 that said she'll always be watching over me. That was kind of surreal. And then, um, just I think as I moved through and took the leap, further affirmation that I made the right decision, definitely came around. I also, at one point, had shortly after my mom died, had written her a letter, and I went back and read it, and it was surreal because the letter really was like to me. Um,
Wow,
so
I got chills on that one.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. And so 2 things. I let Before we get to what's on the other side of that fear, what would you share with others about going through it and what you learned from your experience, and how could you support others in the midst of their fears right now?
So I think going through it, just like I had started to look back on other times in my life when I created what I really wanted. And they almost always involved huge leaps of faith or just sort of a certain element of surrender. Um, and reflecting on that was I was able to sort of bring that power from past me, right, who had gone through those things and realize, okay, the world is not falling apart. So I found that really helpful. Um, just I think recognizing that life is really short, and in order to create something that really makes you happy, you really do need to let go of all those externals and the people that, what are they going to say, right? Thinking about, my ex's family and, oh my God, they're not going to like me, right? So, really disconnecting from that and realizing that ultimately your life is for you.
Mhm.
And by making yourself happy and doing what is in your heart, you're going to bring more to the world. So that really helped me. I think I also would say fear is a natural thing. I think often we think of it as a
Yeah,
sign that we shouldn't move forward, right? So
yeah,
I think I would say that to people who are in the midst of something right now where they feel like, oh, do I need to leave a relationship? I've done the job quitting too. So do I need to leave a job, right? I think we often take it as a sign as no, but the reality is it's it's our ego. It's right. It's the part of
yeah,
us that's worried,
right,
but ultimately we are protected by the divine. So I would say to someone like feel the fear and do it anyway, right? That
yeah,
idea of
yeah,
okay, um just not giving it the power, right?
yeah. And so there's some key words that I heard as you were sharing that is faith, surrender, trust, and face the fear and just keep moving. So, did you feel like it was a step-by-step process, and did that help you to stay in the moment step by step, or did you feel like it was one big leap?
For me, when I've taken leaps, I feel like I've often had the inner processing takes a while. So I spent, I'd say, like a year, even more than that, thinking, realizing, working through it. And then once I knew, I just knew.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so then it was just like I couldn't, then it was a little bit more of a leap. But I think, it also unfolded step by step, right? So taking the small steps of, bringing it up, right? And just sort of letting it, and then letting the universe, the divine, like protect you each step of the way.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of both.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that I heard, and I know this has happened to me and many clients, is sometimes in order to get to that knowing or that place within us where we are ready to move forward is the feeling of acceptance, like accepting,
Mhm.
okay, I'm, because you said, like, well, wait a minute, this was a commitment I made. This was a dream that was like to come to that acceptance is this is where I am now. This is what is now. If I accept him, I accept me. It, that point of acceptance, what did it do for you? Instead of resisting and fighting and figuring things out and that struggle, right?
Right. There was so much power in that. That's
Right.
really, I think, what, right? Because we can accept the situation and just choose to accept it as opposed to resist it, or we can accept it and then move forward in a different way if we want to.
Yeah.
So I think that was hugely powerful.
And it almost feels like I know from myself and watching many clients, it almost feels like that's a divine moment when that happens. You can't force it. You can't make it happen, but through coming back to yourself and going within yourself, like my whole teaching is about changing your life from the inside out. And when you went to that inner self, when you went to your authentic self, your authentic feelings, where you were at on the journey, what it unfolded, and you came to that acceptance of yourself and acceptance of where you have been, where you are, that to me, I've witnessed many people's freedom to move forward, right?
Very much so.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So what's the other
Excuse me.
side of this big journey, this challenge? What is the other side what does it look like for you?
It's really actually very exciting, which surprised me. Once I accepted that what I imagined really just wasn't going to be, it just wasn't right for me in the end. And I think looking back, it was, all of our experience teach us, help us grow. I fully believe. So now it was part of my journey. But now it's just it's like this freedom that I have a clean slate and I can create whatever I want. There's just
Work on that one.
yeah. So I have been so happy. It just, and I'm back to me. So that
Wow.
was interesting when you talk about the true self, right? I'm back to feeling like myself again.
And so, like you said, fear is a part of the journey. So, as you journey forward, what I always ask clients this question, I love this question. What would you say to yourself? First of all, what would you say to yourself looking back? And if you could give a message to yourself when you were going through it, what would you say to yourself?
I'd say trust yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's say fear emerges or there's another wave. It's like we're in waves of the ocean. Sometimes we're smooth sailing. We sometimes we hit, a little wave and sometimes we hit, the tsunami. Okay. But what would you want to imprint in yourself to remember the next time fear emerged?
I think just that I can't let fear control my life.
Mhm.
And almost just giving what really kind of comes to me is just the idea of fear is really, it's just that part of us that worries, right? It's that inner child that so I just kind of actually giving it a hug in a weird way. um yeah, so I would say, like okay, fear, like I hear you. Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you have a great point because there were a few points after I made the decision that I did have those little,
Yeah.
you know, the
We're
fear came,
human,
right? So it
right?
doesn't go away. It's not like it's like, "Woo." Yeah.
Right. And we're
Yeah.
human, and we're here to grow and learn and expand and contract. I mean, and so, it just also, I love one of somebody just commented, moving forward is the key. Feel the bad stuff and let it go. Does anybody have any other questions for Emily? And, you know, I one time I had this really interesting divine moment, and I share this often with people and in classes. And no matter what, you're going to be okay. You cannot not be okay. This was the message I heard. You cannot not be okay. Even when you pass from this lifetime, you're still going to be okay. So for me, that's one of my anchors, is coming back and reminding myself, okay, this is a moment in time. I've always been okay because I'm here. And I got to remember, I'm going to be okay no matter what. But I'm here, and I've just got to keep going. Right. And so that's
That's
kind of the message that I continue to share with myself when the waves come, and or I'm caught up in it. And it's always about coming back to myself. Here, not here, because this can be confusing, and our ego can play all these mind games. But if we come here, and that's where I helped you connect with your soul, yourself, to say, okay, what's the truth? Who am I? Who who do I choose in this moment? And so, I can't thank you enough for sharing, your journey, because it can be very vulnerable, but it also can be extremely empowering. Like, don't you feel like, I witness this all the time with people and myself. Don't you feel like you know more of who you are now because of going through this?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt, and I think, it's you and I it's funny, Karen, we were connected by someone else, and it was the right time, and I think your work, it really just hit home. Just some simple steps you brought me through before our session were just like, "Oh my gosh," because I hadn't really talked a lot about what was happening inside me to a lot of people, um, and it just brought more and more clarity, and then after our session, just I found myself during those times when I was having the fear come up. We like you just said, we have knowing we're always protected. Like we come up with these like, oh, well, the rents have gone up. Oh my gosh, now I'm going to be paying so much more rent. We think of all these reasons why this is a bad decision. And just going back to some of the things that you and I worked on, and being able to visualize some of the stuff that, came up in the session with you, and even the questions, just asking myself again, um, to let the fear simmer, to
Yeah.
give it some love and let it go away so I could continue to move forward. So I think that is what is so special about your work. Just it's really like an inner outer thing. It's not like, so many people can spend years going to therapy, which is a great thing, but just there's just this shift that can take place in moments.
Yeah. And I truly believe that it's the shift from the inside out. It's that inner connection with yourself, the inner knowing of yourself, the connection with your soul, your heart, and feeling the emotions to heal them. And it's interesting. I feel that my own personal journey of transforming my life from the inside out helped me to connect deeply with people individually and in groups, to be able to see into them and to see the potential in them, but also to hold space when they're in the midst of it. Because, again, I the angelic realm has taught me you are never ever alone and you are so dearly loved. And, you know, that's the space the divine held for me as I was going. That's the space that I feel I can now hold for others. So it's just, and when people open up to their authentic self, I mean, that's why I created the Awaken My True Self community, because when we come together with the same openness, and I wanted people to feel at home, to feel safe, to be vulnerable, to be true to themselves, to be connected with their emotions and feelings, but most importantly, connected to their empowerment, and to help them believe in themselves, that they can have the blank slate, like you said, and you can create anything and everything. It all depends on how you align to it within yourself to manifest it in the outer world. And so there was something that the big thing that came to me was I want people to feel at home, like an unconditional home, a place where it's safe, where we're in the same intention, the same energy, like getting back to the tribe, right? Tribes used to work. So anyway, I just want to thank you so much, Emily. And I feel like you have inspired others that there is another side to fear, and you've given them some insight and tools and personal experiences of how they can journey through, and they don't have to do it alone, right? Don't you feel like your mother, the universe, somehow we get what we need, right?
I absolutely agree with that. And what you're saying about community really resonates. At one point, as it was starting to come into my head that, oh, maybe this isn't the right relationship, I had joined a business community. So very different thing, but just being around people who are seeing possibilities is key. So that's where, Karen, I think your community just is coming at such a perfect time for, everyone, just being in a community that lifts you up, where you have people who are seeing the great possibilities for your life, rather than, our families or friends, they mean well, but there's often more of a, there can be, yeah, they love us dearly, but there's often, just a little bit of their own, we're all projecting our stuff. So I think it's crucial that people join something like this. I really think it's a life changer.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much. I'm so grateful you shared. And I just want to keep sharing that there is another side to fear and worry. So, blessings, everyone. And thank you. Thank you.